Nintendo just increased the price of every single game they've ever made on the Nintendo Switch. I actually can't believe we are having this discussion again. We all know that for the last few years, game companies have started to slowly increase the price of gaming in general. But it's gotten to the point in like this last year or so where everything just keeps going up regardless of everything that's happening. We've heard of big gaming companies like PlayStation and Xbox bringing up their console prices in Canada and the US, but specifically places outside of the US. And of course, just recently in our Nintendo sphere, they brought up the price of their last generation Nintendo Switch 1 consoles, which I find absolutely absurd. For as long as anyone can imagine, the older the console gets, the cheaper it becomes. I remember back when I first bought my PlayStation 4, I was a younger guy. I didn't have that much money, but I had to wait until the PS4 either went on sale in store or someone was selling it to try and get a PS4. But I had to wait like a year or two after the PS4 actually came out because inevitably that console would go on sale. Or maybe not a year or two, but like maybe 3 or 4 years after the PS4 went on sale or any console went on sale. You could get it for much cheaper with price cuts, sales, buying it used or whatever. But now we've gotten to this weird situation in the gaming industry where older consoles, including the 8-year-old Nintendo Switch 1, is increasing the price. I just can't even believe that this is a thing. And even just recently, Xbox announced another price hike on their consoles. But what I want to talk about today doesn't have to do with the price hike of consoles because, you know, not that that's expected, but it's kind of already older news. This has been happening already for the last year or two, and we already know about it. We already know that it exists. We already know that it's a problem. What has become even more prevalent in the last year or so, or especially since the Switch 2, is the price increase on games. And I'm not just talking about new games. Obviously, that's a big problem. We went from $60 games to then $70 games for you know, bigger games like Donkey Kong Bonanza. You know, I think the new Call of Duty is $70. Big AAA PlayStation games are $70. And you know what? Yes, that's a problem, but I think a lot more people can stomach that because, you know, these are big games. Lots of content in them, completely warranted. But then Nintendo spooked us with the good old $80 Mario Kart World, which first of all, I do not think that is worth $80 at all. I think Donkey Kong Bonanza is worth $80 more than Mario Kart World. I've discussed this on this channel before. $80 for Mario Kart World is completely stupid and pointless, especially because we don't know how they're going to support that game in the future. We have no DLC for that game. Whatever. This isn't what we're talking about today. The main thing I want to talk about today is the price increase for games that have already been released even years ago. Now, for most of us, this isn't a problem. For most of us, games are still $60. So if you go back to the Switch 1, you can actually see that, you know, you got Mario Odyssey, pretty much any first-party Nintendo game is still $60 price point. And first of all, Nintendo is the one company that can release a game, and 8 years later, it still costs the exact same $60 on the platform. You got like PlayStation, where I remember when Spider-Man 2 came out. That is a huge budget game, AAA game, super expensive, all that stuff, but only a few months later, it went on sale. You would never see that happen with a Switch 1 game or a Nintendo Switch game at all. If a Nintendo game goes on sale, it's generally at least 3 years old. And even then, the most I've ever seen Nintendo Switch games discounted at is 33%. Whereas a year later on a PlayStation game, you could probably get it 50% off in store and digitally and all that stuff. That's just not the case for Nintendo games. Now, I think Nintendo holds their value extremely high for these games. That's what they've even said. So we don't put the games on sale right away because we don't want it to diminish the value of these Nintendo games. And we don't want you to expect a sale after the first 3 months or else people just won't buy it. The reason I'm so fine with spending, you know, $60 on the day one, or at least used to be fine spending $60 on day one of a Nintendo Switch game, was because I knew that it wasn't going to go down in price. The problem with PlayStation games is that if I buy a PlayStation game, or really any third-party game for that matter, if I buy it on day one for $60, I know that the next Black Friday, it's going to go on sale 20-30%. So it's really like a toss-up for third-party games, whether it's going to go on sale or not. Anyways, what's my point of this? Yes, we know $60 games can hold their value, and I'm actually not completely opposed to them staying at $60. This Nintendo platform is seemingly going to be the same platform that Nintendo just rolls with for the next 100 years. And these games are generally actually worth $60. And really quickly, for those people that say, that Nintendo never puts their games on sale. That's just not entirely correct. They rarely put their games on sale, and they only do it for a handful of games, but there are definitely games that go on sale, especially now that they have a very big catalog. Even big games like Mario Odyssey, Breath of the Wild, generally around Black Friday, they will put those games for a lower price, at a discounted price. So just to combat that, yes, they do put their games on sale. It's just not nearly as often as some other game companies, which makes them seem like they never go on sale, for sure. I can see that perspective. But what I'm not used to is older games, 8-7-year-old games, increasing the price. I'm just not used to games increasing the price, because why in the world would a game increase its price? Now, I guess I shouldn't be too shocked, because as we know, as we discussed earlier in this video, old game consoles are getting price increases. Accessories are getting price increases. Amiibo are getting price increase. Like, everything is getting a price increase. Now, of course, generally this is for newer consoles or newer accessories, but to have price increases for old games is just insane. So let me bring it to my main point. Nintendo has officially increased the price of every single Nintendo game they've ever released on the Nintendo Switch. Not in the US though. You're still safe. Any Americans listening, you're still good to go. It's still $60 for every game for now. But as myself, I'm a little Canadian guy. I drink maple syrup every morning. I have a moose in my backyard. Well, not quite, but I am a Canadian guy. That's how I am. This is where I was put. But for the longest time, every game was $80. $80 Canadian. And just recently, like in the last week, Nintendo put up all their games to $85. Now that's roughly $2 or $3 American, but they brought up their Canadian games up just a little bit, from $80 to $85. These are games that have been on the platform for years. Every single Nintendo game I've seen has gone up to $80. Even like the new Sonic Cross Worlds games went from $80 to $85. This seems to now be a console-wide. Every game that was $80, which is, again, $60 American, has now gone up to $85. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe went from $80 to $85. Smash Bros. Ultimate, $85. Animal Crossing, $85. Mario Wonder, $85. Pokemon Legends Arceus, $85. Literally every game went from $80 to $85, which is so silly. And Tears of the Kingdom, which was $89, $10 up from the classic $80, has now gone up an additional $10 to $100. Mario Kart World is $110. Now again, this is Canadian prices, so that's generally about $2 or $3 per game. And that might not seem a lot to a lot of people, but after buying 4 games, that's an additional $20 that you'd already be spending. That's just wild to me. Now there's also slight price increases in other regions as well. The only people that aren't affected by this is the US. Now, why are they doing this? Well, there could be a few reasons. Number one, they're trying to recoup the costs of everything else that they've been doing. We already know, based on like all the tariff stuff and whatever, that Nintendo has been not making as much money as they normally would have been on a console release. They're trying to recoup these losses everywhere else. That's by increasing accessory prices. That's by increasing game prices, buying DLC, releasing more amiibo. They want us hardcore Nintendo fans to pay even more money so that the average consumer doesn't need to spend more money on the Switch 2, which is why they didn't do a price increase on the Nintendo Switch 2. They want people still buying those. But they're trying to get even more money subtly, even if it's only $5 for us Canadians to recoup the losses of everything that they're trying to do. Like, $5 is so subtle that it does probably really make a difference. If you're selling, 10,000 games a day, which I'm sure they're doing much more than that, that's $50,000 that they get more a day. Canadian, of course. Now, you could also say this is because of inflation. We all know that everything is going up in price. Groceries, gas, and everything else is going up just a little bit. And I guess you could say that gaming isn't immune to that. But if we go back to history and we look at how, games usually go down in value, it costs a lot less for games to go up over time. I would say that keeping it at $60 is just fine. I can go buy The Last of Us right now, which was released at $60 US. I can go buy it for like $20 on the PlayStation Store because they lowered the price over time. But can you imagine if they just kept selling it at $60 and then put it up? Look, that's just not something that other gaming companies would do. And I know that Nintendo's not like other gaming companies, but it's just such a unique circumstance and situation that Nintendo has literally brought up the price of their old games. Like, it doesn't make sense. Even from like an average consumer perspective, I see an $85 game, especially for like, an 8-year-old game, like that is just insane. Like, that's expensive. And this is my job. I talk about video games and I think that it is insane. That's just stupidly expensive. I feel like they're hurting themselves more than they're getting. Yes, they're increasing increasing every game by $5, but how many more people, how many young families and, just families in general are going to get priced out because of that extra $5? I know it's crazy, but $89.99 looks a lot less than $84.99. Like, just the fact that Mario Kart in Canada is over $100 is like complete sticker shock. Seeing 3 digits on one game is absolutely psychotic. Now, it's really interesting how a lot of these game companies will increase the price of their games outside of the US. I find that very weird, and I mean, it's kind of hurtful. It's kind of mean. You're kind of bullying these other regions by increasing the prices, but not in the US. Like, if we have to deal with it, why don't they have to deal with it? Well, my theory for that is that, US is the biggest marketing place and the most selling, the US is their biggest audience. The US is the biggest for Nintendo. The US and Japan. So they are trying to protect the US gamers and the, Japanese gamers a lot more than some of the other regions like in Canada. Yes, they care about Canadian gamers or whatever, and they bring everything to Canada and for the most part, but it's less of a deal for Canadians to be priced out than for Americans to get priced out. At least that's probably what Nintendo's perspective is. Now take that as you will. I try not to get offended at that. And I'm a pretty chill guy, but I think it's kind of annoying. And again, the Canadian market is so much lower than the American market that the general public, or like, this probably wouldn't go on news stories, but I needed to bring it up. This is actively affecting how expensive games are for me, and I just find it so annoying. Like, I'm so sick of it, and I know that obviously nobody wants prices to go up, but specifically with Nintendo, like, I love Nintendo games. I love Nintendo. I love the Nintendo Switch and the Switch 2, and I glaze them all the time, but I can't help but look at this situation and just facepalm myself. It is ridiculous that Nintendo is constantly changing the prices of everything. They are actively charging us $50 now for Amiibo. They have to be seeing the outcry from fans of saying that everything's so expensive. And for them to now, randomly, out of nowhere, put the price up for old games that haven't been, price changed in the longest time, does not look good for their image. I feel like they are hurting their reputation more than anything by just increasing the price of games. I'm getting annoyed, and I'm a Nintendo fan. I'm getting so irritated that they're putting up all these prices even more. And I'm the one that's going to buy these games on day one. Why in the world are they increasing the price even more? This makes me want to go to like GameStop and buy the used stuff. You know what I mean? It's actually going to get to the point where used games now cost as much as the games used to cost, brand new, which should never be the case. And again, I understand all the price inflation stuff and everything that's happening, but these are games. These are old games. Now, okay, I'm probably rambling at this point, going over the exact same thing I've said. I'm very disappointed in the decision that Nintendo has made to do this. And I don't ever say like vote with your wallet or whatever, because yes, you can. I literally just by not buying it. And I'm sure they've already seen a slight decrease in game sales. I'm very interested to see that. They usually do like their fiscal year earnings or whatever. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how this affects game sales moving forward, if it affects them at all. But anyways, that's my ramble. I just let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if this directly affects you, if you're a Canadian or whatever, and what you think about this, or even as an American. Let me know what you think about this. If you think it's fair that other regions get the brunt of the get to deal with all these prices and everything. So let me know what you think. Did you see this coming? Do you think it's fair? I'm gonna assume 99% of people didn't see this coming or don't think it's fair, but I gotta ask. Also, if you've watched this far, thanks for supporting the second channel. We love it. And maybe this is the first time you're actually listening to me, in which I have a main channel, Russ Vandy. So let me know what you think. I'm excited to see the discussion that gets brought up in the comments. So I hope to see you in the next one. Like and subscribe. See you later.